Thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Whether you're listening during your commute, while working out, or just relaxing at home, we appreciate you. Every download, every listen, and every subscription means a lot. Up next, the 12 Kyle podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy 12 Kyle. Man, check this out. I actually want to start this episode by asking a question. Do you know where your friends work? I know that's a very broad question, but I gotta ask, do you know where your friends work? Because I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. I have friends, people that I love and care for, that I call friends, that I genuinely do not know where they work. And I think it's quite comical, but I genuinely don't know where they work. I mean, they literally could be Tommy from Martin, and I have absolutely no clue. But here's the thing. If I'm being honest, I don't really care. I know that they're gainfully employed, right? But I don't know where they work. And it's never, how can I say this? It's never been a topic. And I know that may sound a little weird because you would think that most friends, talk about where they work or what they do at work or what have you. But I have a list of friends, and I'm going to go down the list of friends, and I don't have anything written down, but just off the top of my head, I'm going to go down my list of friends, and I can tell you if I know where they work or what they do. Now, here's the thing. For most of my friends, I can tell you what they do for a living. But I don't know where they work. I don't know if they work for Boeing or McDonald's. And that's real. I'm being honest. And how I came to this discussion was my wife and I, we were talking, and she was telling me about some people that she had met in one of her social groups. And in the social group, she said she and I'm just going to use a random name. She met Stephanie, and she said, well, Stephanie works for Fulton County Department of Juvenile Justice, right? And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, so you met her and you found, how did you, and so my question was, as she was telling me about Stephanie, I said, well, how do you know where she worked? She was like, well, we discussed that. And I was like, so you just asked her what she, where she worked or what she did for a living? And she was like, well, it came up in the conversation. And I started thinking to myself, where I work or what I do for a living never comes up in a conversation. It's not because I don't think my friends are interested. My friends, I think my friends know what I do for a living, right? But it's never it's never the topic of conversation, right? So I made a comment. I said, well, that's odd. And she was like, well, what's odd about that? I was like, I just don't tell people what I do for a living. I mean, people know I work. I was like, but it's never, and it's not that I'm ashamed of what I do. I full disclosure, I am a government employee. I work for the Department of I work for the Department of, I was going to say Homeland Security. I'm joking. I work for the Department of Housing and Urban Development, aka HUD. And I've mentioned on this podcast before that if you want to know anything about mortgages, if you want to buy a house, if you want to sell a house, if you have questions about property, if you have questions about your value of your house, if you have any type of mortgage question, I'm your guy. I've been in the mortgage industry for 23 years, I think. Almost 24 years. Let's just say 25. Hell, there's very little that I don't know. I'm very good at my job. I am a subject matter expert on just about any and everything. And if you have a question and you can't get an answer, or if I can't get you an answer, I can point you in the direction to find the answer. So that's what I do. the job doesn't define me. It it's something that I love. I love working for the American people, but it's not it's not like I walk around saying, "Hey, this is where I work," because where I work doesn't matter. What I do for a living, doesn't really matter either, because the objective is to you know get paid my $12.87 and provide for my family, and that's what I do. So at the end of the day, whether I work for HUD or I work for Benny's shoes, it doesn't matter one way or the other. The objective is to provide for my family, which I do. Um, but I said all that to say this: my friends, like, I don't know where they work, and I'm going to give you some examples here. Um, as many of you, if you've been listening to the podcast, you heard me reference my boy Jay Fresh. I've known Jay Fresh since we've been friends since 6 years old. That's how far back we go. Like, I've literally known him all my life. We grew up in the church together. He lived around the corner from me back home in Florence, South Carolina. We moved to Atlanta together in 1997. He's my boy, one of my best friends. Like I said, I've known him longer than anybody else. I can tell you what he does for a living, but I don't know where he works. I don't know the name of the company. He lives in Long Beach, California, and he used to live in LA and Hollywood. He works in Hollywood. He does what they call audio post productions, where you put sound in movies, I guess. But I don't know what I don't know. That's pretty much the general basic as to what he does. Where he actually works, I couldn't tell you. And I've known the dude since I was 6 years old. We talk or text every day. Don't know anything. Let me see. My homeboy Ezel. Ezel and I have been best friends since 7th grade. Ezel is an architect. He's been on the podcast before. He's an architect. I don't know where he works. Well, actually, no, I take that back. You know what? I know the company that he works for, because he works for a black firm. I know the name of his company. I'm not gonna say it, but I know. So he's one. I do know where he works. And I would always laugh because I would call him at work sometimes, and he had this receptionist that would answer the phone. She tried to answer the phone all sexy. I'm like, man, where y'all get the sexy receptionist from? And he's like, nah, it ain't even like that. Let's see who else. My boy Rudy. Rudy, another homie from Florence. He's from the crew. Zell's from the crew. I've known Rudy since 7th grade. He's one of the first friends I met in the 7th grade. And it's funny because I saw Rudy maybe about a month and a half ago when I went to my hometown of Florence, South Carolina. And me and Rudy, we went out to dinner. And I was talking, and I said something to the effect of, I said, so how are things at Heinz? Heinz is a company. They make ketchup. And he said, man, I don't work at Heinz. And I was like, you don't? He's like, man, I had worked at Heinz in like 6 years. And I was like, oh, for real? I was like, I thought you listen, all I know is Rudy works like 6 to 6. So I don't know where he works, but he don't work at Heinz no more. And I know for years and years he worked at DuPont, which was a manufacturing place in Florence. But yeah, up until we had that conversation, I had no idea where he worked. And even now, he told me that night where he worked, but I don't know where he worked. Dr. Jamel, one of my best friends in the Marvel universe, probably the closest woman to me outside of my wife. I've known her 40 plus years. I have no idea where Dr. Jamel works. she's a top 3 pediatrician in the world, and she ain't 3, right? But I don't know where she actually works. She'll be on the podcast soon. Maybe she could tell us where she works. I may not even ask, but I don't have an idea where she works. We can even take it to podcasters. My boy, Eclectic. You guys you haven't seen him, but he does exist. Eclectic has 2 podcasts, the Eclectic Relaxation Podcast and Encyclopedia Hip Hop podcast, and I've been featured on his podcast a gazillion times. He's been on this podcast a gazillion times. I have no idea where this man works. Eclectic and I have actually hung out in the city of Atlanta when he's come to town, and we've kicked it, and we've gotten drinks, and we've hung out, had a ball. I have no idea what he does for a living. I think he's an engineer. I think. For all I know, he could be a member of the Colombian cartel. I have no idea what this man does for a living. I know he works and he makes a lot of money. That's all that I could tell you. I don't know anything else about. I mean, I know a lot about him, but like I've never asked him where he works or what he does for a living. I mean, I would hope that he doesn't work for the Colombian cartel, but he just might. And if he does, that's cool. But I don't want to get involved in any drugs. But again, I have no idea. I mean, Eclectic, I've known Eclectic since like 20s, I don't know, 2000, 2008, like that. And I met him, for the first time a couple of years ago, but I have no idea where this man works. Another podcast, the homie Baylor. Baylor's like a younger brother to me. I don't know where he works. You've heard Baylor on this podcast, and you've heard his podcast, BTG for President and Open Run with BTG, or his two podcasts. I think I know he has clients. That's all I know. He has clients. I think it's some type of health services. I don't know what he does for a living. I know he works and he's away from home, and then he goes home, but I don't know what he does for a living. And honestly, Bill and I, we text every day, or we'll talk on the phone every other day, or whatever the case may be, or send voice notes to each other. I have no idea what the man does for a living. He works, and he works hard, and he provides for his family. So I guess that's all that matters. Who else? Uncle Dolomite, another podcast, my boy. Uncle Dol, I do know what he does for a living. He drives trucks for a living, and he's a comedian for a living. I couldn't tell you the company that he works for. Not that it really matters because he's in LA. But I do know what he does for a living. I can honestly say that he's mentioned it on here before in his podcast before, that he drives trucks. Another podcast of King Germ from Pod and Saved Our Marriage. Shout out to Germ. Finally met Germ a couple of weeks ago. He came up to Atlanta from Tallahassee. He and I hung out at the Little Brother concert. Had a ball. My first time. I've known Germ probably 10 years. Met him for the first time at the concert, or right before the concert. The man is wealthy. We had a ball. But I know he works for a school. What he does at the school, I don't know. And he provides for his family. That's all I can tell you. My brother Damon, I know what he does for a living. Obviously, he's a mortgage underwriter. And that's my brother, so I know what my brother does. My sister Kara, I don't know where she works. I don't know where my sister works. I think. No, you know what? I do. She got a new job. She's a marketing manager for a restaurant in Florence. I do know that. My parents are now retired. But my mom was a nurse. I could tell you I know two places where she worked. But even growing up, like I don't know. I mean, before my mom became a nurse, she worked at this company that was called Sara Lee, not the student loan people. She worked for this company called Sara Lee that made women's pantyhose. Yeah. And I think she was a manager. I don't know. I have no idea what she did, and she did at Sara Lee, and she worked at Sara Lee, man, probably about 25 years before she quit there and she became a nurse. But I don't know what my mom did. And I never knew even to this day, I don't know how much money she made. My dad worked for the Department of Mental Health in the state of South Carolina. He did that for 35 years. I know where it is. I've been to his job. What he did on a day-to-day basis, I have no idea. maybe I should ask him. And it's funny that even at 79 years old, I could probably ask him that today, but I never even cared to ask. But I do know this much. He's always told me like he never made a lot of money. Like I think he said, the most he made one year was like 35,000, which I mean, I'm not even making 35,000, but that's another story for another day. um but yeah, there's quite a few people in my life like where I don't and there are a lot of you who listen, who comment and retweet the show, and I really appreciate it. You comment on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube as well. Shout out to those of you who watch on YouTube. And I have no idea. You guys see at the end of the podcast, I put up the merch. When I talk about the merch, and I put up the picture, that young lady that I put up the picture for, that's Autumn the Aries, fellow podcaster. Autumn works. I don't know what Autumn does for a living. I know her job has her. Autumn lives here in Atlanta. Her job has her between here and L.A., but I don't know what she does for a living. Jay Boog, another fellow podcaster. Shout out to Jay Boog. Jay Boog is in Texas. I don't know where. And it's funny because I know Jay Boog works in retail, but I have no idea what she does for a living. She's not a fan of retail hours. I do know that much. And then when we record just like with all my guests. I record based on their availability as far as like work and stuff. I don't know. Danny Foxworth, fellow podcast. I hung out with Danny Foxworth yesterday. We had breakfast. Shout out to Danny, came through to the A. Yeah, I have no idea what Danny does for a living. And Danny and I went to Waffle House, shopped it for a couple of hours. Good seeing the brother. Hopefully we'll hang out again at South Carolina State's homecoming this year. And we never talk about work. I don't know what Danny does for it. He works. I do know he works, but I have no idea what he does for a living. And again, it doesn't matter. I said all that to say this. I've never been one to, like I said, work. We all work. Most of us, I don't know anybody that's, other than Eclectic, I don't know anybody that's independently wealthy. Well, Eclectic, King Germ, and Dolomite, they're independently wealthy. And Baylor, they're independently wealthy, but they work. They're millionaires. But other than that, like, I don't know a lot of people who, and I just thought about like my boy Mo. Me and Mo, like one of my best friends from college. We play ball together. He's our oldest son, Dion's godfather. Mo he works for a pharmaceutical sales company. I think he's a manager, but I have no idea what the name of the company is. My other boy Clark, he lives literally down the street from me. We play ball together. One of my best friends from South Carolina State. I do know that he's a teacher. He's a math teacher, and I know what county he teaches in Metro Atlanta. So he's one that I do know where he works. I know the high school where he works. But other than that, I've got quite a bit of people around me that I have no idea, from friends to podcasters. And all the podcasts I named are friends. I have no idea what they do for a living. And this is going to make you laugh, and I'll wrap up with this. Like, I know where my wife works. I do know that. I know what she does for a living, but I could not tell you what her job title is because I don't know. She's a VP of something. I don't know what she's a VP of, but she's a VP, and that's good. And she's currently getting her doctorate, so I mean, there's going to be a step up. I would assume. She might be the president of. I don't know. She might be the president at some point. But I don't know. I have no idea what people do for her. But I can tell you where she works. I don't know what she does. I know what she does, but I don't know her job title. I just know she's a VP of something. In fact, when I finish recording, I'll probably go and ask her what it is her job title is. But I said all that to say this. I'm big on people, getting to know people and getting to know what they do, but I'm never really been big on what people do for a living or where they work or how they work or what have you. But nonetheless, while it may be important to some, I guess for me and the people that I care about and the people that I love and the people that I call friends, it's not as important. And if it's not that important to me, maybe it shouldn't be that important to you. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We drop new episodes every Thursday and every Sunday. Also, check out our new baby. It's called the Rap Soul Podcast. We drop new episodes every Friday and every Monday. If you're into merch, check out our merch. We have merch. Click the description box and you can click the merch link, and there you will find 12 Kyle Podcast t-shirts, hoodies, as well as coffee mugs. We got it for the low. And if you're on social media, hit us up. 12 Kyle across the board, 12 Kyle Podcast across the board, Rap Soul Podcast across the board. You can find us anywhere and everywhere on social media. And if you're on YouTube, check us out on YouTube there as well. Again, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle Podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000. Cheers.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the 12 Kyle Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and share this podcast with a friend who needs the 12 Kyle Podcast in their life. Every listen, every download, and every share helps us grow. Thanks for being a part of the 12 Kyle Podcast community. We appreciate your support. We will catch you next time. 5,000.